Hello. How are you?
Hello. This is very weird.
Is
It's
it
my first
weird? Is
live.
this your
It's my
first
first.
live?
It's my first live.
Okay, well, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to your first live.
I feel very legit now.
Okay, great, because this is what makes you legit. I completely agree. I'm
Yeah.
glad to be the one who's taken your cherry, who's
Thank
popped
you.
your cherry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone that's joining, that's coming alive and joining us right now. While everyone is kind of jumping on, I was doing a brief introduction on who you are. For those that don't know, don't get shy. This is Lwazi Mvusi. She is a director and a writer. Some of her accolades, I mean, the list is really, really long. But as a director, Black Tax on Showmax, Makoti, Farewell Elabella feature film, Mzansi Love the State. She's a writer, head writer for Grassroots, which is on Mzansi Magic, Black Tax. You've been on The Hood, Gold Diggers, High Rollers, Lockdown, Says Topla. I mean, your CV is quite extensive. We'd be here all night.
The hustle is real.
The hustle is real. The hustle is real. So I'm so glad that you're here and that you're joining us. I'm very happy that you've made this time to kind of sit with us. And while everyone is joining, I really want to give you the first sort of question that we've been starting off all these sessions with, which is, what is it about a story?
A story is like a friend. There's a thing about a story that lets you see into a world that you've never seen before, live the lives of characters that you've never lived before, and somehow understand them and love them and laugh with them and cry with them. The thing about a story is that it's magical. It is a magical thing. And really, that's really the reason why I've gone, this is what I want to do with my life, because it's like, yes, it's the magic that I've been able to experience. I just want to give that back.
And so in giving that back, does it amplify your experience of the magic as well?
It does, because, you know, a lot of things that, the thing that you really respond to, because whether people really watch something you make or don't watch, whatever else, I mean, whether it's like really like widely received or not, the thing to me that's always excites me and always that makes me feel like, oh, I've done something, is when people come up to me and say, you know, wow, I saw myself in that, or I saw someone I know in that, like that felt so real and so true to me. And that's the thing that makes me go, okay, I've done a thing there. Like there's been some truth in what I've said. There's been something in what I've said that matters in some way. And that's
so
when I'm
for
like,
you,
okay.
is it about work that resonates, that like sees itself land in someone else?
Definitely. And I think, I mean, we've been in writers' rooms before, and that's always the thing. That's always the back and forth is, does a character, does a storyline resonate? Do we recognize these characters, even if they're different to us, even if their experience is different to us? Do we recognize them? Do we look at them and understand their character journey? And so, and a lot of what's going on in the writing room is figuring that out, out whether, you know, this is something that really has impact and has resonance in some way where people can relate to it, not because it's their exact lived experience, but because they're able to understand and empathize with that character.
Dope. So who was it in your life who identified or recognized that talent in you, that was like, maybe this is what you should be leaning towards doing?
It's really interesting because for some reason, I got it into my head that I wanted to write when I was really young, like being in grade 2, writing essays that were really just ripoffs of whatever I had watched on TV the night before, but I was really good at those ripoffs.
Okay.
Copyright infringement. But you know, writing and just like kind of, you know, I remember writing something about me going into Mars or something, and my mom was really just always encouraged that in me. She when I said I wanted to be a writer when I was like 10, you know, she never said that's a weird choice. She was like, yes. And even now she'll talk about how she used to get, you know, she would want to read everything that I wrote, and she really sort of encouraged that in me. And I think it comes from having sort of the generation above her, like all of her aunts and uncles, there were quite a few of them who were artists of different kinds, writers and fine artists and all of that. And so I think for her, at least, it was something that she had an understanding of. It wasn't so foreign to her, so that she could encourage that in me as well.
That's such a blessing and so rare in a South African Black context of what actual storytelling is, and to have that identified is such a blessing.
It really is. And I think it's true for both of my parents. I think both of my parents are people who are creatives in their souls. And who, you know, life kind of took them where they took them. You know, you grow up, you must study a BCom, you must. And I think with both of them, they both just had this feeling of like, whatever you want to do, go and do that thing. Like whatever feeds you, whatever kind of makes you excited, go and study that thing. And I mean, my brother studying to be an actor, my little sister who's like 14, she wants to act, and none of us have ever been discouraged in any of that. None of us have ever been told, no, that's not a living. But it is very much like, well, you're going to have to figure out how you make a living out of that.
How you sustain yourself.
Listen, no one has an inheritance in this game, so figure out how you're going to live.
You know, it's so interesting that you say that, because I mean, I don't know your childhood story. I just know this little bit that you're sharing now, but I can almost pick it up in your work, because in your work, there is kind of like a reckless abandon of rules, structures. This is what is supposed to happen. Your feature film, Farewell Elabella, right? Which is like a story like with a white lead and you know, and a Black man, older generation, different musings, such interesting various themes. What made you want to tell a story like that, you know?
I'll be very honest with you. The way I tell stories, especially if they're sort of my own idea, they just arrive as they are. There's no choice that I'm able to make in all of that. Those characters just sort of pitch up and go, ding dong, I'm here. Do you want to tell my story? And I go, okay, sure.
Okay, cool.
So for me, there was no, like with Farewell, even Serious Single, whatever, there was no conscious thing of like, I'm going to tell a story about this kind of person. It was just that person was there. Yes. And I went, okay, I'm going to lean into whatever it is that you need to say and whatever your story may be. And really, that's how that's come about. It was really funny as well with Farewell, because like for many people who read it for whatever reason were like, wait, is this girl's white? And I'm like, yes. And because it doesn't, I don't think about it in my head, because I haven't made an active choice about it. I haven't thought about whatever the perception is going to be of certain characters. It just is what it is.
So that's so interesting for me, because I feel like in South Africa, in our local industry, we're either telling very heavy dramas that are post-apartheid, quite, you know, cathartic experience, race dynamics, all of that, or we're making fun, lighter, rom-com sort of, there seems to be no middle ground. But Farewell kind of, you know, walks that fine line in a very interesting way. So how did you manage to find a balance and find a market to be able to tell the story that you wanted to tell?
I mean, the good side of it was that I was just telling a story that I would want to watch, and in the type of genre that I would enjoy. I love a comedy drama. I love something that's emotional but also makes me laugh. That to me is like a great experience. The other side of it, the bad side of it, is that it is hard to find a market for that. I mean, the film really struggled in that regard, in terms of like people not knowing where to place it or how to market it, or how, you know, who is this supposed to be for. And it's why honestly I didn't think I was even going to get funding for it, because I thought, oh hell, like they're gonna just be like, who, where, how, and why. And fortunately nobody asked me that question. I think I was very, very lucky that nobody asked me that question, because I was just like, guys, it's a story, it's got characters, it's these people, it's these lives, we go with it. But it was tough, and it did make me kind of have to be a little bit introspective and be like, okay, what is your end goal here? If you say you want to make films, what kind of films do you want to make, and can you accept whatever the reality of that is?
Is there a market in South Africa, though, for the kind of work that you want to make?
I would say yes and no. I mean, there's a lot of people who've watched it. I mean, since it's been on Showmax and whatever else, there's been people who've watched it who maybe wouldn't have gone to the cinema to watch it. Yeah. And I think that's where streaming platforms are really great, because it exposes to people to a variety of different things, and people eventually work their way through. I don't want to say no, because I don't want to believe in that no. Yeah. If that makes sense. To me, I go, if this kind of film was an American film or a European film and it came to South Africa and people went and watched it, that means there is a market for it.
Okay. And that's the bottom line.
To me, like, there is a market for it. Whether there's a market for it when it's a South African version of that then becomes the question.
So with Seriously Single, if I can put you in the frame of Farewell Elabella and with Seriously Single, is that it felt like you kind of took the rule book of what South African films need to be and wrote what you wanted to write. The characters felt there's an idea in South African storytelling that you must dumb down for a mass audience. But the jokes were really elevated. They were quite witty. They weren't spoon feeding an audience. And I found that so refreshing. How much backlash did you get in terms of that, or if any?
Honestly, none. In that, when we were making this film, when we were writing it, well, not when we were writing it, maybe just after I'd finished writing it, I think Looking for Love had come out, which was pretty raunchy, and it had those jokes and everything else. And I think the benefit of working with Burnt Onion Productions is that they're young production company. I mean, they're young people in a production company. So for them, they, when you've got people who are running the show who do want to push the envelope a bit and, do want to kind of sort of make something, again, that they would want to watch, that then you're like, okay, we're going to walk this journey. And there was a point where, like, there was a question about, should we, some of these jokes, but then also we're like, we'll figure it out later. We'll see what happens. And here we are.
So in the figuring it out, then the real question is that how then do you manipulate or change your writing style to make it more mass market, because you also work in television,
right? I think the thing there is, in all honesty, I've learned to be a chameleon as a writer, particularly in television. When you work, I mean, I've freelanced my entire career. There's even in times where I've been at one place, I've never finished a year on one project ever in my life. I think the longest I've gone is 8 months. So I have, like, consistently just hopped from job to job, head writer to head writer, writing room to writing room. And what that's done has it's trained me to be able to adjust my writing, to be able to go, what am I working with here? What is this genre? What is needed from me as a writer, and be able to adapt to that, and not sort of be like, well, but my writing style or my taste or my whatever is this, that, and the other. It's going, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to do what's needed from me, because I'm hired as a writer. And what I'm going to give, though, and my input, though, is going to be ways in which we can make things stronger or better, or whatever else. And, how we tell a story, that's where we play. That's where we, you go back and forth and you talk about it. But in terms of, sort of being able to tailor yourself, because from channel to channel, even, you have different target markets. You have different audiences from channel to channel.
Yes.
So if you're writing across channels, you have to learn how to service all of those channels. You have to learn how to sort of speak to those channels at all the different levels. Be it drama, be it comedy, be it whatever. You got to learn to do it. You don't have really a choice. So that training has that's like really in me at this point.
So when you were writing Seriously Single, who was your end goal? Who did you want to be sitting, watching that and having that moment that you spoke of the resonance?
Honestly, I wanted it to be young people, like not young people, I lie. I wanted it to be women who are not the traditional idea of what a woman is supposed to be, specifically a black woman, what a black woman is supposed to be, but what I know a black woman absolutely 100% is and can be all the time.
Yes.
I was, I wanted to tell the stories that don't not this Madonna whore, not this mama, not this, just young people living their lives, the mistakes that we make, the, you know, how we have fun, how we fall in love, how we do those things in a way that, you know, isn't sugar coated, is kind of like a little bit rough and tough, is a bit like, yes, you're drinking every night, is a bit, you know, you're making terrible mistakes and going back to the guy that you shouldn't. Those are the
Yes.
things that really, really happen. And I think sometimes in rom-com, you know, everything can be a pink bubble, and we don't talk about, you know, how sometimes our personalities can be an issue.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
for me, it was really just about being like, wanting just people who right now in this modern world falling in love, how do you experience that? What is that like? What are the pitfalls? Like, what is the fun aspects of it? It was that. It was like, oh, I don't fit into whatever the traditional ideas of what womanhood is, but this speaks to me.
That's what was so great about these characters, is that they felt so familiar. I was just like, when I mean, the lead is she's like in a drinking, this is not a spoiler, this is just being in your 30s in Johannesburg. But when she was on a drinking spree, I was like, that is what it looks like. So the characters felt like people we know, and obviously there's a lot of recognition because of the area and all of that stuff. So I want to know from you, did you start with the character? Did you start with the journey? Did you start with the scenarios? Where did you start when you were crafting Seriously Single?
I'll tell you, you know, Seriously Single, I really owe Seriously Single to Twitter. Years ago, I've had this idea in my head for years. Years ago, I remember there was this thread that went viral on Twitter where this girl was so heartbroken, and she was talking about how her boyfriend of however many years had gotten married and she didn't know. And I remember being shocked and horrified by the story. But then my family, my friends, anyone I spoke to about this, they were like, oh no, I know, you know,
it's a more common story than you think.
This is like a common story. And I'm like, how is this a common story? Like, how is this what people are doing? And so it became, okay, what's going on here? Who are these people? Why, you know, who finds themselves in this situation? Why do women, you know, how do women find themselves in these situations? Why do guys do this? What does that say about where we are in terms of our love relationships right now? So it really came from that situation. It came from a tweet. And
inspiration strikes like, okay, from the most.
Listen. It came from a tweet, and it just was like building from there. And I think maybe, you know, and I don't know how it is for you, but I know people think there's just one way that you're inspired by things. We're inspired by a whole lot of things. Farewell Etta Bella was not inspired by the characters. It was inspired by a road trip I took with my family on that same road. And I was like, who are these people who live in like the flipping Karoo? Like, who are you people? Like, what goes on here? What is your story? Like, what's up here with you guys? And that's really, like, for me, that's how it just, you're just like, who, where, what is the narrative behind all of this?
Yeah. Sometimes for me, it can even come from one word. Like someone will say a really funny phrase, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, you know what that's going to do? And then it kind of like, you know, snowballs from there.
Mushrooms from there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you never know. And I think that's the thing about writers. I mean, writers kind of, I mean, there's a joke in my family. Don't say anything about Lwazi because it'll end up somewhere. But as writers, we're watching, we're listening, because you never know when that creativity is going to strike. You never know what's going to trigger something in your mind that's like, actually, there's something in this.
Yes. There's a real truth in Seriously Single, where if you have been like a Black woman, I think it actually cuts across races, which is actually so important and so amazing. By the way, there is a New York Times article based on Seriously Single, so that is pretty huge, just to show the global reach of this piece of work that you've written. What do you want to say about women's voices and women's narratives specifically?
The thing I've always felt about women's voices is that this idea even of women's voices, we're characters just like anybody else. I think I've seen this about actors who will audition for parts that are female actors who audition parts for male parts, to kind of be like, the second we start going women, then suddenly there's all these weird blockades that happen. Suddenly
Yeah.
there's certain ideas of what that means and what that looks like. And to
Mm.
kind of have the freedom to be like, it's just human beings making mistakes, being useless, trying to figure it out. Because lots of the time, that's how we feel. Sometimes I feel incredibly useless. I can see myself making a mistake from a mile away, and I'm like, I'm making this mistake. And then I'm trying to figure it out afterwards. That's all of us. That's all of us just trying to do that. So I think it's when we stop sort of going, what is a woman's voice? And we're just like, who is this person and what are they going through and how do they navigate their way through it? And the fact that it is a woman,
choices are they making?
what are the choices are they making? And not being so protective sometimes. I think sometimes we're too protective of how we portray women, in that, no, a woman shouldn't do that, or we shouldn't make, oh, she has to, she has to be apologetic, or she has to be, the real reason why she did this was because she had a child, or because, she was whatever, she went through whatever traumatic past. Sometimes you just are the way that you are.
And there's nothing you can do about it. Mara Brock Akil says that, like, being Black, Latino, Asian, it's not a genre. Being a woman is not a genre.
It's not a genre,
Rom-com,
and it is.
thriller, those are genres.
Those are genres. And it's all about that burden of representation. Of like, now you suddenly are like carrying the weight of all of the stuff. And I think one of the greatest things that Mindy Kaling ever said was like, I want the confidence of an average white man. Just do like whatever.
I love that quote. To just make the work that you want to make.
Yeah, sink or swim, mate. Like, do it.
Just do it. So you're the quintessential writer director. You really kind of fluidly move between both. So how do you then have to adapt yourself if you are making someone else's work, for example?
I think it's always, to me, I mean, I've been very lucky in that most of what I've directed, I've also written, even when it's been in a television, even if it's been television, I've been like in the writing room or something like that. But in the times when I haven't, I've always wanted to know, what do you want out of this film? Mm-hmm. To the writer, producers, whoever it is who came up with this idea, what is it that you want? To make sure that in every decision I'm making, I'm working towards giving you the product that you want, because it's not my film. I haven't written it. I don't know the genesis. I won't always know all the nuances. I won't always understand. But if I know what it is that you really want, what this thing is really saying, then at least that guides the choices that I make, and it guides.
So it's back to the chameleon, the chameleonness of being able to adapt in situations.
Yeah, and you really have to do that. I mean, I have to adapt even between writing and directing when I have written the thing. Even there, I have to go, okay, Lwazi, your writer brain right now, we need to not do that, because we need to make decisions, which was hard, especially on Farewell. It's very hard. You write something and you like beautiful scenes. It's like, okay, you're not going to make your day. Now what?
Yes.
And you've got to be able to go, okay, how do we maneuver? What do we move? What do we cut? Does the story still make sense with that? Yes. And then again, in edit, you're going, the scene doesn't work. Does the story work without the scene? You can't be precious just because you wrote it. What is
so do you switch off your writer brain if you're going to direct, or do you sit there like, this line's a little bit trash, I'm going to take it out to change it, whatever?
Oh no, I do. The writer brain is still there. I think it's like the precious writer brain that goes away.
Okay. So
Explain
what that is. So
it's like the precious writer brain is the writer who's like, I have written this. I have written it. It's intricate. It's taken me a long time to come up with these jokes or this deep monologue or whatever else. Do not change it. Do not change it. Yeah. Because it is. You've been sitting there for however long putting this thing together, and then you get on set and it doesn't work. The line doesn't work. It's not funny. Mm-hmm. The action doesn't work. The scene isn't coming across, whatever it may be. Now you must use your writer brain to make it work, to ensure that the line works. It worked back then when you were in your house by yourself. It's not working now on set. Yeah. So definitely, I think that's been one of like the biggest blessings, is to have a writer brain and be able to go, okay, how do we fix this quickly on the fly right now?
To constantly be editing.
That is a huge blessing. I mean, I've edited like full scenes, like
Yeah.
on the like okay guys, we're gonna do this. And everyone's just looking around and going, what? And we're like, okay, we're gonna, you guys got it, good, great, let's go.
So if you're and when you are a director on set and you're stepping in, I imagine that because you've written the words, there is a certain level of respect that comes with it because everyone has joined the project because of the words you've written. But I want to ask you about earning respect.
Sunny, why are you talking about that like anyone knows who the writers are?
That's why we have this platform. That's why we have this platform. This is what I want to know.
Girl,
so do you feel like you have to justify yourself as the writer before you justify yourself as the director?
I'll be honest, particularly in a South African context, because I don't know any other context of it, our television industry is weird in that writers tend to be very isolated from everybody else. I have been on full projects where I've never met the crew, I've never met whoever was cast, shocked as anybody else when I see it. And so there isn't really, the producers kind of will serve as the bridge between the two sides, but the writers really sort of are isolated from everybody else. And it's why, writers are infamously known to not show up to rap parties because we're like, I'm going to get there. Nobody knows me. They don't know that, like, I was the one who put them through that scene that they all hated for 3 hours. They don't know that. So writers tend to
it's funny because it's true.
It's true. We don't.
Yeah.
And if we do, it's because we're just like, I want the free alcohol and the free food. Let's go. But all the writers are calling each other, going, "You're coming, right? Yeah, I'm coming. Okay. If you're not coming, I'm not coming." Like that's really what it's like. It's so glamorous.
No, the glamour is completely removed, but then you move into the position of director and you kind of are running things and you can take liberties, but you don't get to hide behind the script. So what liberties then do you take as the director to be like, this is my vision, and I want my vision executed?
Yeah, I think that's just about setting it up really upfront in pre-production. Being like, I'm very clear about, I will do a presentation to all the departments. I have my slideshow and I'm like, this is what we're going for. Now you guys go and do your slideshows, because what we do is a visual medium. And I'm like, I can use words. Yes, I'm a writer, but no one will ever, you can't capture the same way you will with an image.
Yes. True.
And so for me, it's very clear. It's very important for me to be very clear about, this is what I'm seeing, because then people know, they can see the full picture of what's going on. They can buy into what you're saying, and you don't need to sort of, in my experience, there's no need to sort of me enforce that, because we all are in it together. We're understanding it together. We're moving through it together.
So then, do you feel that like, you do your presentations, you come through as the director, you make this amazing film, Farewell Ella Bella, cool, great. Now it's time for the next film, right? Because you're only as great as the, I'll speak for myself, is that it feels every single time like I'm starting from zero again. It's almost as if the CV is there for show, because every single time you have to show up like it's your first time. It's almost as if the accolades that you've earned don't mean much. So I want to know from you, like, going towards making another feature or getting into another head writing job or whatever. How do you move your head around that?
I mean, it was tough after Farewell, because I thought, great, I've made a feature film. It's out there in the world. It's a whole piece of work. And no one's out there saying that I was terrible at it. Surely now I can get into directing TV. Surely. Yeah. No, it's not enough that you've made a feature film, because it doesn't prove that you can write TV, that you can direct TV. That's what I was told. It doesn't prove that you can direct TV. Film directors, you guys only shoot 6 pages a day. In TV, you shoot 12 pages a day. You won't be able to handle the pressure. I got a lot of just like, nope. And so I was like, wow, okay. And thank goodness I can write, because then I just went back to writing. And with the directing I've done with Makoti, with Black Tax, the directing I have done has been really because I've been in the writing team, and because the producers know me and we have whatever relationship we have, and they've been willing to go, okay, cool, we believe in you enough to be like, here's some episodes, direct that. That's the only way I've been able to do it. I've never where I've been given a call and been like, hey, come through and direct, or send us a show reel, whatever else, and gotten the job. Never happened. And I don't
So
think
do
I'm
you
that
feel
bad.
like the goalposts are shifting? Like they constantly shift? Like what is it going to take?
Yeah, I feel like the goalposts constantly shift, and it's kind of like you cannot get, which is I think the problem all over the country. You can't get the job unless you have the experience, but you can't get the experience unless you've had the job.
Yes.
So how now does that work? How do you put that together? And so I've been lucky. I mean, the people that I work with now are all people I've been working with since the very beginning of my career, and they've all grown with me and watched me grow and watched me on my journey. And so there's a lot of trust there. And I'm lucky that I have those relationships with those people, because to this day, I don't think I still would have directed anything, honestly.
It's mind-boggling, and it's a little bit frustrating that like you with your CV and all your accomplishments are still speaking like someone who has not done everything that you've done. So what do you think is the next step? I mean, I know that your feature film was made largely because of the Emerging Black Makers Film Transformation Fund. Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is, girl. I got very good at saying that.
Yeah. So do you feel like you have access to it? Do you feel like you have access to funding? Do you feel like you can phone the DTI? Do you feel like you can make your work happen?
I think so. I think the difficulty becomes in terms of time, because the reality is this is not Hollywood where you get paid a whole lot of money and that money can can sort of keep you going until you make your next whatever. In our reality, after Farewell Edda, I went straight into work. Like literally, I didn't, in the dream world, I would have taken a month. Like I think a week later, I went straight back to work. Seriously single, straight back to work. Anything, straight back to work, because I can't afford not to. In a different world, I would have written another feature and directed another feature, because I would have had the time to write it in order to get the funding to direct it. I'm still trying to finish writing it, because damn it, if I don't have deadlines, and I'm going to keep the lights on. So I think that becomes the thing, is that I personally feel like I have access. I think for me, my problem is I don't have the time to write for me to even apply for anything. I mean, these days you got to have like a second draft script ready. Who has a second draft, first draft, anything ready?
Girl. Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough.
So how do you then keep yourself going? Because that's ultimately what feeds you, right? Is creating work, taking the life that you live, interpreting it, and making stories. How do you keep that side of you fed in order to make bills, make the work you want to make, and get new opportunity?
I think it has to, which I'm not great at, but I'm trying, is planning and scheduling and being like, okay, you need to do this, you need to write this, figure out how you're going to make it work in this week, but you need to dedicate this output. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. For me, it has to be scheduled, just like everything else has to be scheduled. That's really what it is.
And that's the only way you can really make it happen, right? Is that it has to be scheduled and it has to be a part of the journey for you.
It does. And also because we are creatives, it is the arts, but it's still our job. It's still our job at the end of the day. It's still how we earn a living. It's still a job. And so you have to treat it like a job. You have to give it the time that it needs as a job. We don't, the luxury of kind of like going and sitting in a field and thinking about it for a long period of time, we don't really have that.
I mean, Michaela Cole for I May Destroy You, sorry to interrupt you there, wrote 119 drafts, I think, to get to where she was. I mean, that luxury is unheard of.
That luxury, but also that discipline to write that much. I mean, I do not have it. After draft 3, I'm just like, I'm tired, guys. Like, to write that many drafts, the discipline, the work, the focus to kind of get into that, because she didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
She didn't have to
Yeah.
do that.
So how many drafts of Seriously Single did you go through?
I think it was 3 and a polish.
3 drafts and a polish. That's very impressive. That's quite succinct.
I think it was 3 and a polish. I think it was 3 and a polish. But it was, I mean, I had a really great script editor in Tracy Lee, and even, you know, with Burnt Onion, you know, notes and everything else, everything's like really intensive in every period. And so every draft is like a really sort of intense sort of draft, and that would push me to be like, okay, let's look for those jokes, let's get funnier, let's build those characters, let's push. I mean, there's nothing like, oh, I have to be funny, I have to be funny, I have to be funny, I have to be funnier, I have to be funnier,
Yes.
I have to be funnier, I have to be funnier. But you do it. You do it.
Yeah. How did you
working.
fine tune yourself to trust your gut that this is funny? Like, this is funny, and that's what I'm gonna stick to.
When I'm like, but this made me laugh. And I'm like, I don't like my own work. I have many issues, but I'm like, but that's funny. So if I'm like, nah, that's funny, I'm like, I'm on that hill. I'm like, but that's funny.
So with your 3 drafts and a polish, how long did it take you to write Seriously Single? Like in months?
I think we did it over the space of a year. I think we did it over the space of a year because, you know, we're getting feedback from all the sort of connected parties and everything. I think year and a half, I'm not sure. And then also then kind of everyone has their other jobs. So the scheduling of it. So it's not like a year and a half of like consistent writing, but it was that sort of general period of time, if I'm not mistaken. It's all a blur.
So do you watch your own work?
in a very
I love asking this question, because you would be so surprised at how many people do not and cannot watch their own work, particularly writers.
Yes, right. It's hard. It's very hard to do. It's very hard to do for me specifically when I haven't directed it, not because I think I'm that great, but because I'm like, oh, I have to get used to someone else's interpretation, and I have my own interpretations in my head, and sometimes I can't reconcile the two and just enjoy myself with it. I remember Farewell Elabella, which the first time its world premiere was at the Zanzibar Film Festival, and it was in this old fort, open air old fort, and my aunt and my mother came with me. And I kid you not, I spent the entire film walking in the market outside the fort. I could hear it, but I was just like, I cannot watch.
You couldn't watch the audience experience your work.
I couldn't. I was like, what if people don't find the funny bits funny, or there's that awkward silence that happens? Like, I just couldn't do it. And then the first time I did watch in a cinema was at then the Durban International Film Festival. And myself and Jay Anstey, who is the lead, we sat on the floor at the back of the cinema.
Yeah.
On the floor, like holding each other, because she doesn't like watching either. And we're just like through the entire experience.
How did you watch Seriously Single?
Seriously Single, I watched with my family, my aunt, my uncle, my mom, my little sister, my cousin. We all sat together. I was sitting on the floor the entire time because I was just like, but it was great watching it with them, even with all the sex jokes.
Even with all the sex jokes?
Even with all the sex jokes.
Well, then that's a triumph. That's a complete triumph.
I mean, they had a few prior to, so I think it was okay.
So how much of yourself then would we see in the characters in Seriously Single, or even in the work that you do write and make? How much of your own voice sits inside those characters?
It's an interesting question, because I think there are pieces. I mean, I haven't had the experience yet of a character where I'm like, oh, I am writing me in this. But if I think about like with like the Noni and Dineo relationship in Seriously Single, I would be the Noni, because I've told many of my friends, my friend, can you just be single, just like for a month, just be single for a month. And my response to like anything, I mean, you're feeling down, something's wrong, let's just go out, let's just go out and party, let's just go party, let's enjoy ourselves.
Dance it out.
I do not have her adventurous sex life. So I'm like 50% noni. So in terms of like that motto, I've said that to many of my friends. So there I can be like, yeah, there's a bit of me in that character.
Yes.
With Farewell, when I wrote it the first time, I hadn't been through anything she had been through. But then I did like 3 months before I had to shoot. And it gave me a bit of perspective that I was able then to kind of use and put in the character's hands, where her journey of grief wasn't sort of a generic journey, which it was because I hadn't gone through that specific kind of grief. But then suddenly I had an understanding, and I was able to sort of use what I'd been through to give her sort of a different journey of grief than maybe what people are used to seeing. So I think it's about using parts of me or philosophies I have or ways I view the world to give to characters where it makes sense for those characters, not because I'm like, I want my thing out there in the world. If you're telling a story about a girl who's very delusional about her love life, you know, you want to give her a friend who's like, screw love, let's go drink.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
So how much did you lean on archetypes and like non-archetypes for the story of Seriously Single? Because it feels like you kind of did both, which is why it feels so interesting and fresh.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, you know, I think one of the things that annoys me the most is when in a trailer you sell something to people and then you don't give them that thing. If you sell a genre and then you give them something completely different, that's sometimes why people like that movie sucked, because they're like, I was expecting something and you gave me something else, not in an interesting way, but like you just like missold this thing to me. So with the rom-com, there's certain expectations, and you need to value your audience and give your audience what they expect, but then find new ways of kind of telling whatever the story may be and whatever the journey may be. And so we definitely leaned into the romantic comedy genre, but then we went, okay, but how do we challenge that? How do we now, in when was it then, 2018, now 2020, what is rom-com now? I mean, I love rom-coms. I watched all the rom-coms in the 90s, but a 90s rom-com and a current rom-com can't possibly be the same because the world is different. We are different.
So different. So I'm so interested in how you tackled this rom-com genre, because it is you know, for people that either do tell stories or don't, the rom-com genre is actually particularly challenging in that really it's quite set up in what it needs to do. So how did you work your way around that?
I think number one, playing with the subplot, to kind of have the plot moving in one direction, the subplot leaning more into the rom-com version, sort of idea or the genre, in terms of Noni's storyline. I think that really helps it because it still gives sort of that ending and everything else, while still allowing this main character to kind of go on her journey, that where she's learning from her mistakes and trying not to fall back into it. So I think playing with the main plot and the subplot was really helpful in looking at the two different relationships and how different they are and how they contradict each other was like number one in achieving that. And then number two in achieving that, I think, is kind of,
before you tell us number two, I just want to explain to everyone that when we speak about the main plot and the subplot, the main plot is basically the steering's whole story, and then the subplot is the support character, and in Seriously Single it would be the story of the best friend. So kind of those two stories going parallel.
Those two storylines. So what you can do with those, with subplots, is you can amplify your main storyline, or you can use your subplot to sort of contradict your main story, or run opposite to your main storyline. And what that does is it just creates different kinds of viewing experiences around the story. It gives it different sort of different life energy in different spots. And that's from what I feel like that's when subplots really work, is when they're able to say something that comments on the main storyline in an interesting way.
I mean, the rom-coms are a thing of like the 90s, right? Early 2000s. And so to kind of have this resurgence of them is pretty exciting. And to have them with people that look like us, that speak like us, that, you know, are so South African in that way. What do you want to say about the rom-com genre? What do you feel like it can do that other genres can't do?
I think this is going to sound so weird. And I know some people who are watching this who know me are going to laugh when I say this. But there was a time where I got very addicted to Love Island, the UK version. Don't judge me. It's really good.
We will reserve judgment.
The thing that was really fascinating, because I was watching them all as characters, and the thing that's really fascinating about love is that love can bring out the best in us, but it can also bring out the worst in us. It's like, if you want to know who somebody is, put them in a situation when they're in love and that love is falling apart.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing that's really interesting about rom-com is like when we are in love or we're falling in love or we're dealing with love, who we are sometimes is insane. And I think that's where that's what we need to look into, is not this idea, which I think a lot of the time we would have, is this idea of like a woman who is lonely and her life will be fulfilled when she has love. Why is she lonely? What is going on with her? What is her story? What has she been informed by? What are her flaws? What are her problems? What is it about her? What is her journey that in finding this, that this love is going to challenge, but also that this love story is going to help her grow and change in whatever way? Not because she's lonely, not because she needs love, but because there's something inside of her that we're telling that story, that internal sort of journey that she has. And I think that's where rom-com can have sort of another life, is when we really start to interrogate, what are people in love like? What are they informed by? What is it that they are going through? And how the love complicates that.
I mean, love is I don't want to go all into a love chat, but it really is all encompassing in a way that like can really change who you are and affect your life and your movements and all of that. And that's so reflected in the characters. So how do you feel then about your work being labeled as like post-apartheid South Africa? Like, this is what post-apartheid young Black people in South Africa are like and what they're doing.
I will take it, and I will say why. I remember years ago going to New York for a film festival, and Zuko Nodata's film Between Friends was playing. And Between Friends is a bunch of young people, they're off at a resort, it's all the madcap relationships, all of that stuff that goes on. And I remember people in the audience being like, that's not true. Like, we didn't live that life, that it somehow it contradicted what they perceived South Africa to be, young Black people in South Africa to be, and therefore did not want to accept it, even though we're all sitting going, no, but that's exactly like I do that once a month. What are you talking about? And so for me, if it's under sort of that banner, as long as they watch it and they accept it, I'm good with it, because we are the ones who can decide for ourselves and determine for ourselves, you know, who we are in all our various forms. Seriously Single is one part of the population. There are many films that speak to other parts of the population. All of those parts are absolutely true.
Yes.
And that is the post-apartheid reality. And so I'm like, yeah, sure. If you watch it, yeah, great, call it that.
This is what makes your work so interesting to me, and especially for like young writers and storytellers, is that we're finally getting a chance to tell layered stories that are different, that my experience and your experience are not the same. I feel like we've been painted with one brush for a very long time, and that's what makes your work so exciting. Is that the kind of thing that you want to do, show different pockets of South African realities?
And it's like, honestly, if we're not the ones to do that, who else is going to do it? We can't be mad about, you know, white people telling our stories, or Americans or Europeans coming to South Africa and telling our stories and everything else. But once we get the chance, we don't take the risk of, you know what, actually, I'm going to run with this. And I'm going to try and say something. Even if it's, you know, couched in a rom-com, there's something I can still say in it.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the genre is, there's truth. There's still something you can do with it. And I think that's the thing, that's the responsibility we should not run away from. We shouldn't think that if you're making something fluffy or you're making something that's a comedy, that it can't be true as well. that it can't have impact as well, that it can't, you know, resonate with people as well. There are so many comedies that I've watched that really, you know, have made me like, wow, emotions.
Yeah.
I just told you about me and Love Island. I was just like in that. I was like, these people's lives are so entangled. But like this,
Yes.
you know, and so I think we think only drama does that, or only like really sort of gritty, hard shows or films do that. And for some it's true, but not for all of us.
So
And we
how
should
do
be
we
free to
get the
do that.
work made, Lwazi? How do we get the work made? Because you want to tell a story that is prefaced in dramedy, in something a little bit lighter in genre, but it's very impactful. But how do you get it made without having to have a weeping mother and then someone dying of AIDS and then this and then the, you know what I mean?
I mean, you become like me and you just keep working all the time because no one really knows.
Yes.
No one's really watched. But one thing I will say is that, and I've watched the other versions of the setup, and they're all incredibly true in terms of like, it is very difficult. I'm not going to lie and say that it's easy to get the funding, it's easy to get people to back you. It's not. But I will say that, and I think it's the thing that we don't talk about, is I will say that in a lot of the funding that I've gotten,
Yes,
many people have not applied. People do not apply. We don't apply. I've had both with my short film, which was Women in Film, NFEF's Women in Film program. I was doing my master's when that call out came out, and so I didn't respond to it because I was like, I'm still busy with school. The next year, I got an email saying, so there's another call out because we don't have enough candidates. Do you want to try out for it? And I did, and that's how I ended up making The State, which, you know, then I formed the same relationship with the same production company, Born Free, that I made my feature film with, Farewell. And even there, we submitted Emerging Black Filmmakers Fund. We submitted, and there was a second call out. Like let's say we submitted in like September or something. There was a second call out in December. I was so mad. I was like, why is there another call out? You guys are killing my chances.
So you're saying people aren't taking their futures in their own hands?
They really aren't. Like there are a lot of different programs out there. And we've had this conversation before about like something can be a start. You don't know where that start is going to take you, but sometimes you need that start. And there are a lot of programs that give you that start. They're not perfect. They're not. I'm not going to say that it's easy, but I am going to say that the reason why I've made anything has because I just flipping applied, man. Even like internships, whatever. I saw like writers wanted on the wall at WITS, School of the Arts, for internships. And I was like, I'll apply for that. And then they ended up getting a mini series from Zanti Magic, which is like early in Zanti Magic. And I ended up writing an episode, and it went into the CV of someone who did not have connections, left Durban, went to Joburg for film school, finished film school, and was like, I don't know how to get a job. Like it was not, it's not an easy thing to do, but there are things. And when you see something, apply for it. And when you apply for it, go for it, push it. When you get it, push it as much as you can.
I think that speaks like across the board. It's that you got to get your work written, you got to get your work down, and you got to get your work seen by as many people as possible.
Yes.
And that is a really key, that's a key piece of advice that I got from someone who was just like, stop holding all of your ideas and your babies to yourself. That's how to not get something made.
That's how to not get something made. And unfortunately, in this industry, like I have 3 degrees. People have known me for 10 years in this industry. They don't know that I even have 1.
Girl, you better speak on it. You educated.
They don't even know. Like no one cares. What they care about is what you have done. That is what they care about. So whatever chance, I mean, my very first job, funny enough, was with the Zuma sisters. We had the sitcom on Zanti Magic. Zanti Magic had just started. And they had come to after a time and doing my undergrad and doing my 3rd year, finishing my 3rd year. And they wanted writers. The rate was terrible. It was not a professional rate now in retrospect when I think about it. I mean, I was writing like 7 episodes for what I would get paid for like 2 now. But for someone who, and there were many people that I was in school with who did not take that opportunity. They turned it down. It was too little money for them. They didn't know what the hell Zanti Magic was. I'm not doing it. I was like, I will do it. because I don't have anything in my CV. I don't know anything. I need this
Yeah.
experience. I
You
will do
need-
it. Lokshin bicycle bubble. Hey, girl, you and me, we've come far. Bubblegum
We've
movie.
come
Hey,
so far. Bubblegum
inside the
movies.
bubblegum.
Yeah.
Inside the
Yeah.
bubblegum movies, Lokshin bicycle inside them. Because you're like,
Yeah.
you know, and again, Lokshin bicycle, one of my head writers was Kat Ramapakela, who brought me into Burnt Onion, who brought me onto My Perfect Family, and now we're
You
on
don't know
Netflix.
what's going to, yeah, now you're on Netflix.
Now we're on Netflix. You don't know. You can't be snubbing things. Go for everything, because you don't know what you will get and what you won't get. There's a lot of things that I haven't gotten. But man, if I don't spread those applications wide and far, because I didn't. I had nobody that I could go to and be like, hey, can you let me in here? Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. You know, we're running out of time and it's stressing me out because I want to ask you so many things, but before we have 1 minute. I just want you to speak about women and your worth and negotiating your worth and getting your worth. What is your take on that in a minute?
In a minute, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone, call somebody and ask them, how much? How much do you get paid for this? And then go in the room and add 5,000-10,000.
And put that down.
Okay. Finish and klar. And say with confidence, I know that this is how much people get paid. I want to get paid. But we have to be willing to talk about it.
Okay. Well, then I'll take that. I'll completely take that. Thank you, Lwazi. We're getting a lot of questions about the sort of the application process and that it is very daunting. In 1 more minute, what do you have to say about that? Is that what do you need to do that you can be intimidated and it's hard?
I will say, I mean, I got off very lucky because I had a relationship with the production company that I partnered with, and they were able to handle that with me. So if you are able to partner with someone maybe who knows, or I mean, entertainment lawyers are very expensive, but also entertainment lawyers will stop you from getting sued for things you don't know about, quite honestly. So, I mean, if you get the help, because honestly, you can find yourself entangled in things that you do not want to be entangled in. It is very tough, but if you can find someone who knows and can read through and can give you the information, absolutely try and find somebody to do it, because doing it by yourself, it can get very tricky.
Thank you so much, Lwazi. Your insights, your generosity, and sharing your stories and everything. Everyone, go and stream on Netflix, Seriously Single, Lwazi's latest work. We can't wait for your next feature. She is a thought leader and an all-round badass in this industry. I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you for joining us on Rewriting the Script. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week, Wednesday. This will be uploaded immediately. Go and check it out. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this.